Again, if there's something that comes up as we're going, please shout out. So this is one of the pictures that we have on the website. So I'm just going to start with this kind of the house, and I'm going to, again, as I always do, start with making a copy, right? That way I've got the original. If all goes bad, I can do that. Now I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, you were asking about this kind of adjustment layer. So I'm just going to do a brightness contrast layer here. And basically what I've done is I've added this new layer to the file. And again, it's a non-destructive way of doing this adjustment. And I'm going to just kind of, I'm going to do it extreme so you can kind of see it. And by clicking here or not clicking here, it affects the layer below or all the layers below. So right now, with that little kind of, there's a little, I will say a crossbar going through it, it's affecting all the layers. If I click it and you see if you get just the arrow down, that's just affecting the layer below. Okay, so I'm just doing the layer below here. So it's only affecting this one. So if I turn on this one, you'll see that brightness contrast did nothing to this layer down here. It's only going to affect the layer that's immediately below. Whatever that layer happens to be, it will affect it. Okay.
So if the original is the layer below, so I put it in a wrong order, it will actually affect the original photo.
Yeah. So if I move this layer down, you can move a layer, you just kind of click it and drag, and you get a little blue bar. You see that it's affecting now the layer below, not the one above.
Yeah.
And again, the cool thing about this is I can double click on it and make that adjustment with it. It's not a permanent adjustment. It's just a temporary adjustment. Okay, so clicking that changes that, and I go, oh, I want more brightness, I want less contrast, boom. And it's affecting, in this case, all the layers. If I want just that layer, I click the little square with the arrow. Okay, so that's like all, this is just one. And you should, if you scroll over, I don't know, it was doing it before, you got a little kind of a preview what that did. I don't know why it's not doing it now. Maybe because I clicked a couple times, but it's just going to affect whatever layers below. And you'll see it here. You also will see that arrow in the little kind of template or the preview. So that's saying it's a brightness contrast. Over here it's saying that. And if you can't read it and you want the bigger, you can make these bigger. You can spread that out. I keep it as small as I can just because of working with a small window here with you guys. But you can definitely move these out. And you can, in fact, move this somewhere else if you want to. I can put it up here. Okay, it just becomes always open. Okay, and I don't do that because I'm going back and forth with my panels here. But you can do that. And if you don't want this, you turn that off simply. You can add something else. And the cool thing is these things kind of, they layer also. So I'm just going to do a warming filter, and I'm going to do it just below and click OK. So now it's doing just below on this layer, but it also lets this other filter come into play, this brightness contrast. You can see that turns on and off. So when it's going below to the layer or an image layer. It's not determined by the layer below if it's an adjustment layer. Okay, so I can add even a third adjustment layer, it doesn't really matter. We're gonna put in, just gonna do something that you can, it'll show up. Okay, and we're gonna do just the layer below by clicking that. So now we've got 3 adjustment layers working on this picture. Okay, and I can turn them on and off. And again, they're only working this layer because this layer is below the adjustment layers, not this original layer. So as I turn that off, you can see it's not affecting this, it's affecting this. Okay, so I can build upon adjustment layers. I'm not limited to just one. I can build multiple ones. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. The with the 3 adjustment layers,
Mhm.
like I guess I'm not sure I understand like how it is affecting each layer. So you got the first top 2, right?
Mhm.
And then you did 2 different things on there. So I don't see the difference if you click off the second layer or the first layer, you know?
Yeah, so they do affect each other, but and I can change the order here if I need to. So I'm gonna just turn off one layer. This is the photo filter, and we made that an orange layer. Okay, it's a warm color. Um, so if I turn that off, you can see the blues come back into play. Okay, and if I this brightness contrast is going to get darker. So right now, the only adjustment layer that's doing anything is this blue one that I made. I made it basically more blue and more cyan. So I took those colors, which normally would be in the middle, I moved them up so it's more cyan and more blue and more green in here. So if I may move that layer around, it will make a slight difference in what it looks like because of the order. So here is we'll call it the green layer at the bottom, and you can kind of see what it looks like with all the filters turned on, or the adjustment layers turned on. If I move that layer up, you can see it made a color shift because of just how the computer is working. So yeah, there is a different kind of, we'll call it a blend, depending on what you do first, second, and third. But they're all adjustable, meaning nothing's permanent. It's like, I don't want it. You can try to either readjust it, move it, or turn it off. Okay, it's totally up to you with that, because a lot of times what we're doing is we're visually looking at it. It's not a mathematical formula. Um, what we do. It's not like adding 2 parts of this and 1 part of that will give you X, Y, and Z. A lot of this just becomes experimentation, and it comes with kind of doing it. So that's when I tell you guys, I want you guys to work with it and practice and experiment. It's so you start to see what it can do. Because every time we do something, it's going to be something a little bit different. So to get the effect that you're kind of seeing in your head or in your mind, um, you got to kind of understand what these things do so you can kind of get to that point. And that's what's kind of cool about Photoshop is there's really about 5 ways of doing things, it seems like. And it's really a matter of what works for you. Okay. I could do these same things here and go up here to the image and adjustments and play with, the hue saturation and play with it that way and make some changes. But the problem is when I do these kind of adjustments here, they become kind of a part of the layer and I can't come back and really make adjustments later. It becomes built into the layer itself, which was how it used to be. It used to be you had to do it this way, but now they've made it better with these adjustment layers and ways to work, we'll call it in a non-destructive fashion. So we're not destroying that layer itself. And again, that's how we should be working, because remember, once you get rid of pixels or get rid of parts of an image, it's gone. Does that make sense? So if I took this picture, and I'm gonna just turn these off so we're not distracted by it. If I took this and I'm gonna select the sky here. So I'm gonna actually do select and sky, and the computer will do pretty good here because I've used this file. It selected pretty much all of the sky. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. If I hit delete, and turn off that layer below, it's gone. Okay, I can't bring that back. Okay, so if I start to open and close and work this file, next thing I know, the sky is completely gone, and I may have wanted to bring that sky in or use it later. But if I work in a non-destructive way and make that a mask, okay, so we're highlighted here and we see the marching ants are selected, and then I come and make a mask out of it, and we're going, I want to keep the land, not the sky. I can hit the mask itself, hit the select, and I'm going to just invert so I have just the sky selected. And now I have the house and the ground without the sky. Okay, so I can now put in another sky, or I'm going to just kind of do this. I'm going to turn it back on. I'm going to turn the sky back on. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the layer that I'm working with of the house and the grass to the top. And then I'm going to turn on these effects again. So now what I'm doing is I'm changing the sky, but not the house itself. Okay, so I'm doing these adjustment layers on the photo. Okay, it's totally on this photo below, but because I've masked out the building and the grass in this layer, when I make a change, it's only affecting what we visually see as the sky. Okay, and if I was to save this as a JPEG or a TIFF, BNP, something like that, what you see is what it saves. Okay, so if I save it as a PSD, it saves it as it is with all the layers, and that's what we want. So we can come back and make adjustments and correct things. And tomorrow we're going, you know what, it's too blue, I want to make it purple. We can come back in here and make this change after I get some feedback or I think about it. But if I want to just kind of say we're good and it's awesome, and I'm going to send it to a website or a magazine to get published, I keep my PSD file, my layers that I have here, but then I do a copy. I save a copy. And I'm just going to say here, copy house. That should be fine. It's a JPEG. And I'm going to set save. And when I save a JPEG, I always typically save for the max. Okay, there's different layers, different levels. What happens when I save low, you see I get it, this is kind of an estimated on the file size. It's 1.22 kilobits. But what ends up happening is when it saves as a JPEG, it gets rid of data and information. So I don't want to do that. I want to keep it as best that I can for now. So I'm going to keep it large, and now it's 1.9 megs. And in reality, we don't really care too much about how big it is. I can adjust later if I need to, but I can't add back. Does that make sense? So, if I take my soda and I drink a quarter of it, it's gone. Okay, so if I'm saving it down here, that's basically saving an empty bottle and I can't put more in. But if it's full, I can do a lot with it. Okay, I can change it and save it in different ways. So I'm gonna hit save. And now I'm gonna open it just so you can see what it looks like in Photoshop. House 2 JPEG. It looks the same, right? You can see it, that's the first one. This is where we are. We made the difference. And you can see it opened up and it's only one layer. There is no adjustment layers or anything like that because it was a JPEG, and when it saves as a JPEG, it saves as a flattened file. Okay, but if I go back over here, this is my PSD file, and I'm going to save it as such. Save house 2 PSD. It just saved it, and it saved it with all these layers. So as I open that file back up, it will have all these layers in it, so I can make those changes down the line. So over here, no changes can be made. I have to start over. If I want to change the sky again, I'm going to do the same thing we just did there. Let me do an adjustment layer. I don't know, maybe we'll go hue saturation, and I'm going to just kind of play with it to get the sky to where I want it to be. All right, and then I have to come back and make another mask, blah, blah, blah. I got to do all that work again. Can I get it to look like this original? Yeah, I can get it there, but it's going to take me a lot of work to do that. Okay, whereas if I'm here, I can come back and make adjustments quickly. So think of stuff like JPEGs, really any format that's beyond the PSD, JPEG, BNP, TIFF, anything else as kind of a way we're going to keep the file to send to somebody, PDF, whatever it's going to be. It's a way that we show it to somebody as the completed file. The PSDs are basically working files. Okay, so you can come back and make changes and such. Okay, again, I'm simplifying it for the sake of what we're doing right now, and we'll get more complicated with it. But JPEGs are simplified, flattened layers. PSDs are complicated, multi-layers. And there's a big difference in the file sizes too. So if I have those both saved, and let me just see if I can save my files. I just want to see if I can get a preview and find it on my desktop. There's a dramatic size difference. I can't, it's buried in my folders here. Last pics, here it is. So the house as a PSD, Photoshop file with all those layers is 50 megs. The house, as I first opened it, was 1.1 meg. As the copy I made with the coloration changes, it became 2.1 meg. Okay, so it got bigger after I did my adjustments to it. Okay, but it's still much, much smaller. Here it is 2 megs. Here it is 50 megs. That's a huge difference. Okay, so 50 megs would be hard to send through email still. It's close, you can probably do it, but it's going to cause potential problems on your side, my side, somebody's side. Okay, so we wouldn't want to send a 50 meg file. Okay, we would want to send it smaller, and a JPEG would work. If I had to send it to you, we're working together on a project and I need to get this to you, a 50 meg file, we're probably going to end up using something like Dropbox if we're not on the same network system where I can kind of log in and find you and you can find me. Okay, we would do something like a Dropbox and send it to you that way. Okay, but again, it takes time. 50 megs is still got to upload and come back down, and that's huge. So the PSD files typically stay on my computer or my hard drives, and then I will send the file I want you to see as a JPEG or some other format that you can open up quickly. And JPEGs typically what I'm using for the most part. There are other file formats, but for the most part, JPEG seems to work with most people and they don't have too much of a problem. Okay, so I kind of explained somewhat the why and how. Who's got questions? I know I'm babbling here, but it's all information you guys got to have as you continue to work.
What about making it a PDF?
A PDF, PDFs are, well, PDFs are kind of weird. You can save them with layers or you can save them without. Now, PDF is not a native Photoshop file, so you're going to potentially have problems when you reopen it up. Okay, I do save PDFs if I'm sending it maybe to a printer. Okay, because the printers like to have PDFs and they like to have them not compressed. So let me just show you what that will do. So file, I'm going to save a copy. Let's see if they have it under here still. PDF. So I'm going to save it as a PDF here, and it see this option says layers. So if I don't want layers, I turn that off. If I want layers, I leave that clicked, and I'm going to hit save, and we're going to get other options here in a second. Okay, so this is where I can tell the computer how to save it. So high quality print means it's kind of something for your inkjet. Press quality is something that's going to go in a big commercial press where they're going to make tens of thousands of them, and these machines are millions of dollars. Okay, the big presses that they make. Smallest file size is typically something for maybe a website, or I'm just sending the file around and I want them to see it, but I'm not worried about the image quality being super good. And this is just another one for Blurb. So I'm going to keep it at high quality. Again, it's for inkjet, and as preserve editing capabilities, I would leave that click. So what that's saying is leave the layers on. If I turn that off, I'll get a warning later. Do you really want to turn the layers off? Because that's what I did there. So Photoshop editing capabilities is layers. Now over here is compatible with, I think we're in Photoshop 12 now. Let me see. It's not going to tell me there. I'm just rolling over. We're in a pretty high level. I would always save it to the highest Acrobat that's available in that document. If I open Illustrator, it might say 11, 12, I don't know, but it's going to be different. But the higher the number, the Acrobat number, the better the compression, the better it saves. Okay, so why is there a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? It's gotten better. And somebody, you might know somebody only has an Acrobat 4. If they have a 4, they can't open a 9. What's going to end up happening is it's going to say they need to upgrade their Acrobat to a 9 or Acrobat Reader to 9, and they'll be fine. Okay. If I'm working with a printer or someone along that line or another designer, I know they're going to have the newest, and if they don't, they're going to get a prompt just to upgrade, and they will. So I always do the highest number, whatever it is, and this changes, like I said, between applications based upon where they are. You can also over here tell it how to sample it, meaning how to make it smaller. So right now, it's going to save anything that's higher res than 450 down to 300. Okay, because I'm at high quality. If I changed it to small, you see it changes everything above 150 to 100. So if my picture is 300 pixels per inch, it's going to downsave it to 100, which is going to make it a smaller file size. And you can see down here, it's basically doing a JPEG low as opposed to JPEGs max, okay, which is what I want. There's a color destinations here. I don't usually mess with any of this, but it's there, and you might have a printer ask you for something specific. This is some security. You can actually add passwords to a document. So I could send you a document or put a document up on the website that's password protected. I can send you guys a password. Nobody can open it because the website's public, but no one else can open it but you guys because it's password protected. Okay, so I can add passwords in there. I typically don't. God knows we have enough passwords in our lives. I don't want to mess up anything else, but that can be done. Okay, if it's something that's controversial or something that needs to be restricted. And it's just good to have because you may be asked to make PDFs for somebody. You're making forms for the Human Resources Office, and they want to make it password protected so no one can look at what the person fills in. So security numbers or those kind of information, it's protected. So only the HR person can do it. So they may say, hey, make a password protected file. It's going to be a template that somebody else can fill out, but it's protected. So it's not like it's just kind of floating around out there without a password on it. So unless you have the password, you can't get into it. And then the summary here just kind of explains what you've been doing or how you've been saving. Okay, and then you're going to hit save and preserve. I think yeah, that's good. It's just basically saying it changed a little bit, but you should be okay. It doesn't open as a generic. It opens as a earlier versions. You must open a PDF as generic, not as a Photoshop. We want to make it. We're in the new versions. We're okay. So they're always kind of working differently. And then if I go over here back to file size, let me see what it came out to be as a PDF, just for the sake of looking at it. Here's the copy. See, it's only 34 megs. So it should have everything that the PSD had at a little bit smaller size, which means they probably got rid of some data. Now, I won't be able to see it. I know I can't see it, but it computed it. So this is the PDF version, and it's got all the layers still on it. But somewhere along the line, it got rid of some information because this file was 50 megs and this one was 30 megs. Now, they're visually, we can't see the difference. So it's probably fine, but in the computer somewhere, there's some different data. Now, long-term, I don't know if it's going to make a difference or not. If you took a JPEG and kept saving it as a low quality JPEG and saved and saved and saved, and let's say you saved it, I don't know, 100 times, you're going to start to see the pixels come in. You're going to start to see the dots on the picture because every time it saves, it gets rid of a little bit of data. Okay, it gets rid of data every time it saves. Okay, a little bit. Okay, but over time, it does ultimately get rid of. Something like a PSD doesn't get rid of any data. There's no compression. Whereas PDFs, there is compression still, so it's getting rid of a minute bit of data down the line. Okay, so if I save PDF, I'm typically saving it to go to a printer. So if a printer would want to have the layers available if needed because of the way they need to export things. So I'd leave it as layers and a PDF. but I wouldn't use a PDF to keep working. So if I'm trying to make this picture better and I'll be working with it for, you know, a week, going back and forth, opening, closing, saving, I would save it as a PDF, not a PDF, okay? Because this is getting really more data. I want to kind of save as much data as I can. That's my goal. Did that answer the PDF question?
Yeah.
Okay. And we will talk about PDFs more. I'm glad you brought it up because when we start to turn in documents, I'll either specify a JPEG or PDF to do that. So right now we're just kind of working things, but we will have a time to work and save things as a PDF. All right, where are we at time-wise? 2 o'clock. Okay. Questions on any of these layers, the adjustment layers? Any questions on making a mask?
Yeah, I'm still having trouble with the masks, making a mask, but I am working on it. So.
All right, well, let me go quickly through it because there is another part of the masking which I haven't told you guys about. Turn that off for now. I'm just gonna make it another layer here. So the point of a mask is to kind of hide or reveal. And remember, if I want to just kind of make a mask, I'm just going to hit the mask button down here. I'm going to be on the layer I want the mask to be completed on. Hit the add layer mask, and I get that. And you'll see my colors go to black and white. Remember with the paintbrush, turn off so you can see what's doing. White reveals, which you see nothing there, and black takes away. Okay, so I can literally come through and paint out whatever I want with that. Let me just see my brushes here. Oh, my brush is down. Opacity there. I can come back through and paint out whatever I don't want to be seen with a mask. Right there, and you can kind of see the mask appeared here. If I make a mistake, I simply go back to the white and I can paint back in. Okay, so it's really still there. The mask is literally covering it up. Okay, so think of the mask as a way to kind of cover up another item. And then I can show something else through. So if I'm going to make a new layer down below, and I'm just going to give it a color. We'll give it that red color. So now below here, it's red, or more of a pinkish mauve type of thing. Okay, so by revealing the mask or hiding the mask, I'm allowing whatever to come through. Okay, so likewise, what I did here, we got rid of this, all of the sky, and kept the house, and it's showing whatever's below. And in this case, there is a red layer below. Okay. And it doesn't need to be just a color. We could do a gradient. We can even do kind of an adjustment. Let me just do an adjustment gradient. That should show up. So right now, the mask, and we'll turn off these items. The mask is covering up the sky, and then it's coming down and seeing this adjustment layer, which actually is a gradient. So it's kind of filling it in. And these adjustment layers work on this solid layer, which it becomes a gradient. So the gradient is very much like a color, okay, or a solid color, just a gradient level. Okay, so in this case, I've added a new sky with that mask. So I've cut out the original sky and allowed this other mask to show through. And the cool thing of it is I can change that gradient to be something else just with a couple clicks, and I can even change how it shows up on there. okay, by turning it and spinning it around. And you can see it's there, and I can scale it to make adjustments that way. I'm basically making the gradient bigger or smaller. And there's different types of gradients. Radial, it's coming from a circle. Circles, okay. Angular, kind of makes, it's kind of like a pyramid. It's kind of a weird one. I've hardly ever used it. There's some kind of reflected that it does. Let me scale it down so you can kind of see that. And then there's a diamond. These are kind of the built-ins. And again, you can change the angles and adjustments with that by spinning it up here with the angle. So 99% of the time, you're just going to be doing kind of a traditional linear gradient. Okay, and this is because the gradient has black in it up here. But if I scale it up, I can hide that. But I can also pick another color with that. So it's a rainbow. Okay, and it's getting muddy because of these layers on top. So let me do that. Let me take off the brightness contrast. Okay, so that's the layer. All these other layers are affecting the rainbow itself. Okay, it's kind of cool. I know, crazy. Okay. Now it's a sunset. All right. So everything kind of affects each item, and the mask is kind of designed again to hide something and reveal something else below. Okay. Other questions on the mask? Did that answer? I mean, please ask, because I'm going, but I don't know if that's getting your question or not.
That makes sense. It's starting to make a lot more sense now.
Okay. So again, to make the mask, again, the easiest way to think about it is you can paint items in, okay, using a brush. That's one way. And depending on what you do, that might be the easiest. If it's something like the sky to get rid of, I think you can tell the computer, hey, find the sky, and then it'll select it for you, and then you can make a mask of it. That works pretty well. Let me just kind of turn this on. I'm just trying to go through different ways of making a mask. Here we have the layer again. I'm going to make a mask. And I can use the marquee tool to kind of select an area, and then I can delete. Okay, I can like paint it in, or I can like just use the paint bucket and paint it. And it made a mask there. Oh, it's because there's the other one showing up. Okay, so that's a way of doing it, is kind of making this kind of, we're still in the mask mode because we're selected here with the little handles around it. I can just kind of make shapes. I can hit paint, fill it with the black. Okay, and that just keeps kind of adding to it. I can also kind of, make it something round. Oops, wrong tool. And again, I'm just filling it in. I'm using the paint bucket to fill because it's just the quickest way to put black in that shape. Okay, so now my mask is kind of weird shape, and it's whatever's showing through that. Okay, so basically if there's a hole in this picture. Okay, I'm just showing you the red so you can see that. So you can do it that way. So you can paint it. You can kind of use a marquee tool to kind of draw it in. You could use a paint bucket. So if you had the whole layer kind of selected, you could do that. And the other way is what we call, make a new copy, is using the pen tool, okay, which is here. And we're going to actually make a clipping path or clipping mask out of it. So what I'm going to do with that is pick a couple things. what this is this same tool will come into play with Illustrator, and you use it all the time in Illustrator. In Photoshop, you don't use it as much as you would in Illustrator. And I'm going to just click a point, and if I hold Shift and click another point, it makes a straight line. And what I'm doing is I'm tracing, in this case, along the house by clicking. And every time I click, it adds a point, and it's adding a line. Okay, hopefully my internet is good. If I click and drag, meaning I click and I drag, it makes what we call a Bezier curve. It gives you these handles, which will make a curve. Okay, so it's a way of making a curve on a straight line. So straight just gives you a point to point. If I click and drag, it gives me these little handles that I can come back to and make changes. All right, so I'm just clicking, going around. So I'm making what we call a clipping path around the house. So in the old days, we had to do this all the time because there was no like magic selecting things and the computer would fix things, and you know, it just wouldn't do it. So we would have to come through and make these clipping paths all day long to trim up something. And once you kind of select, I think, did I get the last point there? No, I did, okay. I'm gonna hit this up here where it says it's making a path. What do you want to do? I can hit mask. So it's basically taking out everything besides what I clipped. Or I can hit select. And it's going to give a little feather. And it made the marching ants. And then I can come back over here and make a clipping mask. And it did the same thing. So it's really kind of two ways. It's just a matter of how you select it up here. Either one works. There's no right or wrong. And now I have the house that's been selected and everything else has gone away. Okay, so everything else is gone with that. I don't know what these dots are over here. Just ignore that. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what that is. Okay. So if I brought in another photograph, Command A or Command All, Command C. I'm going to come back to the house here. I'm going to go Command V, which is paste. I'm going to drag that layer below. And now I got an iceberg with a little house, and I can come and select the house. Speaking of, if you go click and it doesn't go, this is kind of the shortcut. So here's the move tool, right? To move things around. It's how we kind of fix things. Auto select, and I do layer, but you could do group if you have things in a group, but layer. So whatever I click, you'll see it changes on the layer. Okay, and that's very useful as you start to work because you want to get a certain layer. So instead of you having to click here to get to it, if you just point, it takes you to that layer. And now I've got the house, and I'm going to scale it. So you can see it's showing me the house with all the masking in it. So it's not like that stuff is gone. Oops.
What command did you do for the scaling?
I did Command T. It's transform. Okay. I call it scale because that's what but it's this free transform Command T. Okay. There's other transforms like skewing, distorting. So like right now it's there, but maybe I want to distort a little bit or give it some perspective. I'm gonna hit skew, and skew does it like up down. See, that kind of skews things. So we'll say that's okay. Return. Then I'm going to go back to distort, and distort will, again, distort it different ways. You can move different points of that. I'm going to zoom out so you can see the other hand. So even these handles up top are distorting it. So I can kind of get that thing into kind of a perspective that I want. Okay, squatting it down a little bit. So this is kind of how we build things in, right? Because, you know, we're taking one object from one photo and another object from another photo, and they're never quite perfect. of course. So we're making this thing up, this idea that there's this little house on the iceberg going on. So again, I'm just kind of playing with that. Rotate will turn it, but I don't need to do that. I can just kind of turn as I do. Scale is kind of what we just did. You know, so it's just, I just do the free transform. I never kind of go to scale because I can do it that way. So we've got this little house on the iceberg, and it's not too bad. A little bit of a stuff here at the bottom. I can come back in here still, because remember it's a mask going on. I can take my brush and I can make that smaller, bracket left. And kind of pink that a little bit, because I know that's not there. And I can add in, there's probably going to be some shadow, so I might want to just do a new layer. Put that below, paint in a little shadow. Just kind of a dark. If I do a drop shadow on it, it's going to add it on to everything, which I don't want. I just want the shadow here. I'm just going to make a shadow because it's got to sit on something. Everything sits. And I'm going to play with my layer styles. So I'm just flipping down to see which one works. You will see subtle changes on some of them. So overlay, kind of see overlay. What it did was it kind of kept the area, but it kind of colored the ice darker. See the difference there? So here's how it kind of was, and the overlay kind of darkens the ice, which is really how the shadow would be. Okay, so there's going to be some but this is just a new layer, just kind of a little shadow built in, nothing complicated there. And then we have the house, which is cool, but the problem with the house is it's very warm and the iceberg is very cool. So I would want to do an adjustment layer. And let me do, let me play with color balance. And I just want to see if I can cool this house off a little bit. I don't want to lose everything in there, but I want to kind of give it, and there's midtones, highlights, and shadows. And they're basically, think of it as light, dark, and medium. Okay, and that's what these are. So highlights are the brights, the shadows are the darks, and the midtones are kind of the medium tones. So if I want my shadows to be more blue, it's basically taking them, in this case, more cyan, a little bit more blue in there. Let's say I've got more of a cyan color on the rocks themselves, maybe too much there. I do have some weirdness coming on back here because I'm seeing the grass behind it, so I'm gonna have to fix that in a second. We'll just call that good. And I'm gonna make it just on the house, so do this. So before it was doing everything, which was kind of messing up what I'm seeing, it's doing the iceberg, but I just want to do the house. I just hit the layer below. Give it a little bit of, cool it off just a hair. Some of it's subtle, right? So here's to try it out with the eyeball. Here's where it was, here's where it is. It's not perfect, but for what we're doing now, it looks pretty good. So that adjustment layer kind of adjusted the house. But I look at the house and I don't want that green in there. I don't want to see the house below. So I'm going to come back to the house layer, back to my mask with a tiny little paintbrush, and I'm going to paint it out. Now, right now my paintbrush is pretty small, okay? But I could make it kind of look at my brushes to see if I have anything else that maybe a square. There's different brushes you can make up and different brushes that are there. I'm just gonna, we'll keep it as it is. Like click once and hold the shift key and click again. It draws a straight line. What I'm doing is kind of drawing straight lines in here. Kind of cover that up. And what I'm seeing now is the ice below, or the iceberg below on that. I got it all? Yes. Still don't know what those dots are. Okay. So now I've cleaned up that window so you actually see out or see through the house. the way it was originally done. And we have a house and the iceberg going on. These little dots are bugging me. I don't know what I clicked and turned on something. But bizarre. It's not, I don't know what that is. I'm just seeing if it's part of a layer. Huh. All right, I'm not going to worry about it. There's something going on with the computer. So this is really kind of how we use masking all the time. It's to add something, take away something. You know, in this case, we've got the house. We want to put the house on the iceberg. We're doing some kind of, maybe it's a editorial spread. They're going to do a column in a magazine about, you know, living in Iceland, living in Greenland, living in the North Pole, living in Antarctica, right? And they just want to have some kind of symbolic house on the edge of an iceberg. That's the concept. So you have to put a house on an iceberg, and there we go. We've got that done. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So let's say you want to do a spread for houses in Greenland, right? And you want to change the house color to that bright red that's iconic in Greenland or Iceland. How would you do that?
Well, let's go through that. Good question. So one, I could tint it. Okay, but I probably would end up doing, well, let me see. There are a couple ways I would do it. Let me just show you how I would kind of go about that. Whether this works or not, I don't know, because this is how I kind of work. I would just, so I want this house to be the red. So I'm going to just turn that off. So I'm basically painting the tan color to be kind of a, you want that red color, right? That, okay. So I made a new layer and it's here, and it's only, whatever I do is only going to affect the layer here. Now I could probably use the quick selection tool to kind of select. I want to see if the computer will select that area as I'm drawing. Is it going to get it? No, see, it's getting a little goofy. And it's so, what I'm trying to do is select the area and not the other. So let me do the magic wand. Maybe that will work. Get a little bit. So I'm going to just come, I'm going to let the computer select, and I can come back and mask. We'll make that easier. And if it didn't select an area, if I hit the plus, basically hold down my shift key, you see my little wand, there's a little plus that gets added to it. I'm basically adding. So I just need to select that area that was not selected by the computer. Kind of get those tiny little dots in there. Because it was black, it was saying it was a different color. Didn't really want that. Okay, so now I've got most of it selected. Again, I'm working fast just to see if it's going to affect. And let me just delete that. I want to make a new layer and a mask. So it did everything there. I want to invert this. So that's going to be the red. That's where the mask is going to go. And then I'm going to paint in here. Let me just paint and me get a nice red going. A little bit orange. If you get this kind of explanation point when you pick a color, you see there's no explanation point. Here there is. That's saying that color will be hard to print properly because it's so intense. It doesn't mean you can't use it, and it definitely can use it on the screen if you're using but at some point it may not print as good as it would want digitally. And let me get my brush bigger. That's what I want. I actually want, invert it. Yeah, that's what I want. Just thinking here, get that red again. There we go. So I'm painting, and it's not going to paint anything else because of the mask. It's just painting that area. What I'm going to do is end up doing this as a opacity layer. So I'm just painting crazy. So the house is red, a little bit over there. And then what I'm going to do, the quickest thing is try to adjust the adjustment layer or the layer style. So I just want to see what will work. So that did pretty good. I'm going to get the texture from below. So I don't want it to be solid. So I'm just kind of looking through and see which one will work.
Wouldn't the color layer be ideal for this kind of thing?
It could, but you're still going to have to mask out. Does that make
Okay.
sense to get that red in there? Because I only want red on the building, not on everything else. So
Okay.
the color adjustment layer is going to be everything. And then you're still going to have to come back and mask. So what I did was I built the mask. It's just the house itself or the walls of the house. And now I painted it. And now I'm just looking to see what layer style will work. Because I know I can get one of these to work pretty decent, right? That's too much, right? You can't see the details. But if I go through these, it's going to give me something that I want. That's too pinkish. That's not bad. So if I want kind of a darker red, I'm like looking up here between dark and multiply or burn. We'll do that because I'm getting the most light with that. So now we have that red house on the iceberg. Again, if I don't want the red house, I can just click it off. Right, that's kind of the cool thing of it. And if I want to change the color, I can just literally come back over here and paint with a new color, and it's going to paint in that color. And I could do a color adjustment, which I did here originally to kind of give it that cool tint, though it's not as bad here because it's not already colored. So here was that cool tint I added to the house to make it more icebergy feel. If I turn on the color now, we still keep the cool tint with the red underneath. Okay, so yes, everything can be changed, and there are ways of doing it. Let me just show you this. There is also, it works sometimes, it doesn't work others. Let me do this. Under adjustment, there is a replace color match. And this, again, sometimes you got to work a little practice, but I want to replace this, okay? And basically what you're doing is you're making a mask in order to kind of select that area and pull it in. I don't do this super much, but this is a way. We'll see if we get into this or not. But let's say you have a t-shirt and you want to change the t-shirt to be 3 different colors. And you could do that with here by replacing color. Okay, so it's making one shirt green, one shirt red, one shirt blue. Okay, so you can do a color replacement with that here, and we can kind of flip-flop colors out, and you can select the color you want to change. It gets a little weird with what it's doing, but it basically it's kind of making a mask and changing the color in that way. We'll see if we get into that. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say more in depth, but you can do that. And you can also selective color, meaning you can tell certain colors to change. So in this case, I want to get the reds different. So we're just making sure we're on the layer here. That's not really showing me, is it? This is basically a color changer also, but it's not really showing up on this particular instance. But it is designed that we can do that. And I got to get like the right pictures to do with the examples of that. Otherwise, it's just kind of goofing off. But there, again, these are like inverting. It changes it, flip-flops it. And again, it does whatever layer you're on. So if I'm on this layer and I invert, it gives you that kind of negative feel, which might work, right? I mean, this might work if now I want to make the sky dark, right? So it may not be that I want to invert the whole picture. I just want the sky. So therefore, we're going to mask out things in order to do that. Okay. So a lot of it is kind of like, how do I do it? And what do I want to do to get to that overall look that I want? All right. Other questions as we're moving along here? See what else I want to cover today. Anybody come in late that I'd missed? Okay, one came in. I see you there. Okay. Other questions? Give adjustments. We're playing with masking, layer styles. Let me just do gradients really quick. You guys are going on that. So again, a gradient, a couple ways of doing it is, let me turn that off. We had that layer. I'm just getting my layer set back up here, guys. 1 second. All right, so we had the clipping mask, and we did this like red layer, and then we did a gradient here. So there's two ways of doing gradients. One is a gradient adjustment layer, which I like because again, we can come back and change it quickly. There is another way of doing a gradient, which is using a gradient tool over here. So by the pink bucket is a gradient tool. And if I click that, again, it kind of gives me options and just kind of a different panel, but up here are gradients. And these are all the ones that I have loaded up. You may have this or not. And then you can see other options down here that are loaded up. If you don't have that, all these options under gradients, you can open a new gradient preset, and that should take you to where they are on your computer. Or you can import gradients. You can maybe download gradients if you want on that. And these are all changeable. So over here on my right, I have panels of swatches, gradients, and patterns, and then just basic color. But if I click here, these are the same that are over here. Okay, but I can make adjustments here. So if I want to change that color, I want to, let me get it going here. Come on. Just a second. Why aren't you opening up here? Okay. Go to plus. Okay. So I want to do a new gradient. Whatever it happens to be, don't worry about what we have here. I'm going to make a new one. And I'm going to hit the plus, and I get this, and I can name it. It's defaulting to these, but I can also pick one of the existing color bands that I want. We're going to do, let me do a rainbow. We'll use that as our starting point. So this is a yellow, violet, orange, blue gradient, and we're in a gradient editor. We're going to make our own gradients. So how does this work? These are our colors down here, these little boxes. And if I click on that box, double click on it, I get to open my color box and I can change it. And you can see it's changing the color, in this case, to red. I can also click over here and change it. So it's really just a matter of where you want to click. I end up typically clicking on the box because I know I want the, instead of clicking here and then clicking here, I may as well just double click on that and open it up. That makes sense, just seems to be easier. And I can literally change the color of that gradient. So I'm making my own custom color with my gradients. And you'll see these little diamonds in between. That's kind of the midway point. That's where it shifts from one color to the next color. So if you had, you know, black and white, where was it at? Halfway of black and white. That's the point here, that diamond. And I can move these colors to get the kind of gradient that I want. So I don't have to have them equally adjusted. I can go through. And if I want to add a color, I literally just click. I'm just clicking and it added a little color box, and I can then come in and change that out again. Okay, so I can make different colors. And this is the color that it's going to be saved as. Okay, so whatever this is. This is kind of changing what is going to be part of the gradient. Okay, so we just kind of leave that usually at whole 100%. And then I usually kind of call it something. So we're just going to call it grad 1. And I think that should save it. Okay, and somewhere. Didn't save. Darn them. Okay, so there it is. I had to do new. Custom new, just change grad 2. Hopefully that will save the name. That's what I'm looking for. Got weird. That's the one I did though. All right, I don't know why it's not saving it properly named here, but that's the naming that I did. That's how you make an adjustment. Here it is, the one that I did with that extra band. I know what it looks like. Okay, so I made a gradient and I'm using the gradient tool. And then what happens is, yeah, get my layers right. Hold on. Getting confused. I'm going to do a new layer, turn that off. I use my gradient tool here. As I draw, it's going to put this is the angle that the gradient is going to take. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and it made it from black to white based upon this. If I redraw, it replaces it or goes over top. It's not getting rid of. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird that it just kind of keeps changing it, and I can, even if I change the pattern, it's just kind of putting the other one on top of the other one. So I don't like this way of using the gradient tool because it's not as adjustable. Whereas here, if I do the gradient, I pick that one that we used, it put it back in. And if I want to change the angle, it changed it here. You can see it's a live kind of change. And I like to be able to see what it's doing. You know, and if it did this and I want this angle, but I don't want the black and the white, I can just scale it up, basically scaling up the gradient. So I get what I want, the light to this orange, without seeing that black over there. Right. So I think the gradient layer mask or the gradient adjustment layer, I think works better than just the straight gradients. Okay, but it is possible to do that, and you might want to use a straight gradient Let me just kind of maybe something that's kind of a sky. All right, so we just kind of put a blue sky and I don't want the radiant. Okay, so put that blue in. You know, so there might be a time you want that, but I tend to like going through the adjustment, because once I'm through the blue is the blue, and it's just like it's hard to change. Whereas with this, I can literally select a new gradient and I can come back to the blue now, or I can change it to whatever I want. Visually, it shows up a lot easier. Okay, so I think it's just a matter of how you want to work, but I like this way of working. And you're going to go, why does it do one and the other? Well, basically, it did the gradient. It had the gradient tool first, and then they added the gradient adjustment layer. So it kept the other one, but it's still that we have the new one. So they didn't get rid of the old. They left it there in case you want to do that still. But most people tend to, well, I don't know, I can't say most people, but it's easier, I think, to use the gradient fill through an adjustment layer than it is through the actual tool itself. That makes sense? So it's just gradients. And again, they're changeable. Okay, they're totally adjustable and changeable. But the computer does a really good job of kind of building things in. So it's worth kind of checking them out before you like kill yourself trying to build one. There's a lot that are built in. Okay, and there's a lot of times we do it. And again, the gradient doesn't need to be completely opaque. We could have it just kind of be as a blended layer. So here we are just playing with the layer style that kind of lets the clouds come through, but also gives it some color. Okay, so here it is. Turned off, here is turned on. So it's tinted. Basically, we're tinting the layer, in this case, the clouds below, with a gradient. So it's just not one color, it's kind of blending from light to dark. And you may go, well, that's kind of boring. Let me give something maybe darker. Okay, so here's the layer. Whoops. Before, so we're just tinting it just a little bit, and you can see it's kind of pulling out some of the colors down in the low area a little bit more. But if I don't like it, again, I just clicking, come back up and go, well, let me try something else to get that to where I want it to be. You know, and don't be like, why are they rainbows? Well, sometimes these things do some really awesome things. Look at that. That's a super mod, cool, everything. And I might want to come back through and play with the colors a little bit, and again, adjust the layer as to how I'm doing it. That's crazy cool. All right, so I'm just kind of playing with the adjustment. So here it is. I'll go back to soft light, and you're going to go, wow, that's still too much. Well, I can still come back and play with the opacity and drop it down. So I'm getting kind of a color tint in the sky, but it's not really there. Does that make sense? So there's the purples and the blues and the yellows, but they're not really too obtuse, too much in your face, because I'm using a soft light adjustment on it and also playing with the opacity. So again, you can pull that opacity up and down to give you the color that you want. Okay, I'm gonna keep it really colorful because I like color. Okay. So again, it's just kind of a playing, it's an experimentation, it's a figuring out what this machine, with this computer, with this software will do. And that's really where I want you guys to be at this point. It's kind of be like doing this kind of stuff. I'm gonna have an assignment for you guys for next week. So let me go through that. We're at Tuesday, Thursday. So next Monday is a Labor Day holiday for everybody. Tuesday is the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, so I won't be here. But what I'm going to do is have a video, probably like a Terry White video that we can watch online. computer doesn't stay plugged in. And I'll have a small assignment. And what I want to do when that small, the picture is available online under our website. And we're going to be doing is working on this file. And I just want you to kind of start to work and clone and healing brush to make this picture better. And what I'm trying to do is get you to start to look at photographs and kind of see what's good and what's wrong, or what could be better with the photos. So again, this is a nice photo, nothing wrong with it. Girl, she's in Italy and they're traveling and having fun. But there are some problems, right? There's some cars back here that are kind of distracting. There's a manhole cover here that I think is distracting. So what I want you to do is kind of come in here and just start to work with the layers and work with pulling that up. So real quick, I'm just going to do a little demo with this. And for example, is I don't like this manhole cover that's here. Okay, and over here, it's just distracting. The whole point is to make the picture as least distracting as possible. So how would I fix it? Well, I'm going to make a new layer, of course. And then I'm going to use, in this case, the clone tool. And we are sampling current and below. That's what we want. So it's going to sample from below. And I'm going to get my brush sized up a little bit. And I'm going to click my option. And if I start to paint, it's going to start to paint in that. And I might change where I'm getting it from at some point just to kind of break it up. What we're trying to do is kind of paint in some of the cobblestones from below. So when you zoom out, it kind of went away. See, with it, without. Now it's not perfect there, but you can see if we take the time to get in there, we can kind of make the picture stronger. Does that make sense? So you got to have a good picture. It's got to be composed. It's got to be there. But there's things that are going to happen in your picture that you didn't want. And it could be this. It could be leaves. I know in this picture, if we zoom in enough, I think there's some butts down here somewhere I saw on this. Some cobblestones. Look, there's a cigarette butt. Okay. Now, again, it's Italy, so maybe there, it's not, obviously was in the picture, but you might want to get rid of it. So in this case, I'm just going to make a new layer here. This is going to be my spot healing time. Give me a little brush, and I can come back in here in a matter of seconds, wipe out that little thing. Again, some of it maybe just a kind of a color shift. Some little objects. So we're just kind of looking and seeing what's distracting. I don't know what that is, but I don't like it. So I'm going to get rid of it because it will show up eventually. Okay, so if I turn that back on, it's not much, but you can see there's the butt and there's that little light. I don't know what it is. There's another one there. So get rid
During
of
all this, should we be renaming the layers?
What's that?
During all this, like spot healing, I guess you could say, with the different layers, should we
Yeah,
be,
I like to.
renaming them, like of what we did in that layer?
You can. I mean, at this point, it could do this like, manhole. It depends on how complicated you're going to get. It's not a bad habit to get into. I'm just not labeling just quickly to show you. So let me just healing brush. We should call it spot healing. Will be proper. Because we're going to keep building. The whole point is to kind of get rid of things like the car. I don't want the car, right? It's a great picture. So why do I want the car in there? Maybe the people, maybe they'll stay, I don't know, but we're going to get rid of the car and the police van. Okay. So I can make a new layer. Again, we're going to just kind of do that. And I'm going to come back to the police van and I'm going to do a healing brush on it. Okay. I'm going to get that brush smaller and I'm going to select up here and I'm just going to paint down. And I have to kind of stop and start with the paint so it gets the pixels right. Otherwise it kind of copies from below, which I don't want. And I'm just kind of painting in. This is not going to be perfect, but I'm going to be able to get it pretty darn close that when it's said and done, you won't know that police van was there. And I'm working very rough in the beginning, but we will get it better as we go. And I'm coming back and forth. What I'm doing is painting in pixels from other areas. Okay, and I'm going pretty close to where I would want to be. So the colors are pretty close. And I'm just gonna, you have to just kind of keep clicking and reselecting the area you want to clone from. And it will keep copying down. And we're gonna just kind of build this out. Again, with a little bit of practice and a little bit of time, and if I, took 20 minutes or so to do it, I can pull this whole thing down. When you're said and done, you won't even know it was back there. Right, so let's clean that up a little bit. We're close. I'm just painting it out really quick. At some point, the road's going to come back across. And things you can do to kind of fake it out is like, there's these little colors that are like light, right? They're light bulbs. So I'm going to select this light bulb and I'm going to put it in over here. This kind of fakes your eye out to thinking, oh, it was there. There's something back there. It wasn't the thing. So I'm turning the layer off. So here it is with it on. Here it was off. And again, we're not there yet, but you can see quickly how your eye is starting to think it wasn't there. And because it's kind of blurry back there anyway, we've got a lot of freedom to be able to do this and to trick your eye, and you won't know that it was actually there or not there. Okay, so you have to kind of figure out what would it look like on that. Now, things you can do, and I can here, but had I had the other side of the building, I could copy from over here over to here. Okay, so that's something you might want to look at, is you don't have to copy from nearby. I kind of have a curb here. I'm going to make a big brush just to show you. I'm going to select the curb here, and then I'm going to come over here and paint. And you're going, well, that's not right because the curb is there. I could make this thing flip as I work. Does that make sense? So I can go into my clone source and I can tell it I want to flip it. So here's the width and the height. So I can literally tell it to do it the opposite way, or let me just get rid of that because I didn't want to do that. Do it on a new layer. Turn those all off, not to distract you. Come over here, select my clone source, come here and paint, and then I can literally go to edit, transform, flip horizontal, and look, it just built in the curve. Okay, so here it is. Copy, here it is, putting it in. Oops, there we go. All right, so it put the curve in. Oh, what did I do here? I deleted something. Oh, that's going back. Oh, it went way back, too far. Sorry. There we go. So we flipped it. Okay, so you can take things from other areas and bring them in, especially when you've got quote, symmetry going on. You can start to bring in things. And again, it's a nice picture. And if we go back through and clean it up a little bit, it will become even a better picture. Okay, so that's really what we want, is I want you to kind of start to look at photographs and kind of analyze them. And as a designer, as an artist, as a visual person, to start to see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, how can I make some improvements, and I think like this is just a great little improvement. It didn't take a lot of work. I can get that adjusted quite nicely. And it just gets it back to where we're looking at her. We don't get distracted by, in this case, the manhole cover. Does that make sense? So that's the kind of things as designers. So this picture is available on the website. I'm going to write this all out for you guys. Don't sweat it, but that's going to be like Tuesday's assignment is I'll put it up. What are we at? Thursday. I'll try to get it up by tomorrow. So you'll have it, but nothing, I'm not going to collect it, but I may say, hey, Thursday, show me what you got. So we may have you share the screens real quick to see it. Okay, but I want you to kind of work on that between now and next Thursday when we'll have class again. Okay, so I'll put the assignment up and the pictures on the website that we can use. And I just want you kind of going through it and feel free to open up your own photos and just kind of work with it or work with the other pictures that we have on the site. Because again, we're just, it comes down to experimenting. It comes down to playing with it to get better at it. Questions on where we are, what we're kind of going to do, and again, with no class on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, I hear an echo. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So we have no class. So do we have to show up to here on Tuesday, or
No.
is it just kind of like a day off type stuff?
It's a day off. You have assignments, but there's no Zoom.
Okay. And then how do you change? I don't know what to call those. It's on the right part of your screen, like where it says like layers and whatnot. How do you change it like that? Because on mine it doesn't show it like that at all.
I'm sorry, how does what show again? I'm sorry.
Where you click for your layers, how that toolbox or whatever you want to call it is like that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make it like that? Because on my screen it doesn't show it like that.
You have it like this?
No. And I can't share my screen, which pisses me off.
Can you share? You can't share? You won't share?
No, because I'm on a different computer with
Okay.
my stuff, but it's just where you have your menu of like
yeah,
colors.
Yeah, if you go to window,
okay,
you should see one that says layers.
Oh, okay, so then you just
if you click that, that's going to show it up. That's going to make it show up.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if you're looking, if it's showing, let me just see, that's the search effect. There may be things that in a different mode up here. Does that make sense? There's a little drop down. So if you're not getting like, it's like I don't know where things are, some things are showing and other things aren't. These are ways that you can kind of save your layers or view layers. So if you go just back to kind, that's what you want. That's showing everything. You can also turn it off. There's a little toggle switch here, so it just kind of defaults to everything. But you can, well, the reason it's here is if you're working complicated things, you can make adjustments to the layers. So how it's being seen, and you can go into some like color shifts and stuff like that with your layers from a working standpoint, like, you know. So here I'm clicking on it and I want to make that layer orange. It just kind of gives me an orange. It's not doing anything. It's just a way for me to see it as I'm working. So I didn't change anything with the file itself. I just changed here the color. Usually it's like no color. Does that make sense? Did it show up your layers?
Yeah, I mean, like it shows
Okay.
up all my layers and whatnot, but I was just talking about that side menu that you have, because how it shows up on mine is different.
Yeah, you're saying this whole menu, you're saying?
Correct.
Well, if it's like this, if you got small little icons, you can make them bigger. Does that make sense? So right now it's small. I just open them up so you can read it. Likewise here, you can pull those in and out. So that could be an adjustment. But you basically just kind of drag it to the side and kind of it presets them. This is also another way. See, I have it on essentials, but if you know you're going to be like doing photography, you can bring up different items, okay? Because there are items you may want to use more as a photographic thing. So I don't typically have those because we're doing, I want to just kind of do the essential stuff with you, but you can preset your views for different tasks. So this is a graphics view, and you see typography popped up really big. Okay. We'll get to type. We haven't done that yet, but there's ways of changing this by that kind of little pop out. But you should be able to just kind of drag them over, and they should just kind of pop into place. Like if I want it patterns, I can just kind of put it in here, and now it's in this column. That makes sense. And I can get rid of this whole column if I wanted to. If I don't want the navigator, the histogram, the brush settings. What is this one? The brushes. I can literally just take that off. Okay, I can close, 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 close. So that whole panel's gone now. That makes sense. So everything is really kind of adjustable. I don't mess with it too much because I want mine to kind of look like yours, like you guys. It should. This is kind of a sort of default look, and I just kind of work with it that way. That way, if I'm showing you guys something that should be close to where it is on mine, I don't. But all these things can move up and down. You can move these tools any way you want. Again, I just keep them the defaults. But if you like, hey, I want the clone stamp at the top, you can literally drag it up. You can make adjustments and move these things around. Okay, but I don't recommend it because then you get confused more. All right, other questions?
Yeah, I have a question actually. For the assignment, you said that you're gonna start uploading like the assignment like tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, I'm just going to write it out. But basically, we're taking this photo is already online.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's, I want to say it's photo 4 or something like that. I don't think I.
So we like either start tomorrow or today.
You can do it anytime you want. You're basically just cleaning up the photo.
All right.
Let me just see what picture it is. It should be, that's the iceberg. There she is, number 4, photo 4. You can download this at any time and start working with it. Other photos we worked with today, there's the house. That's the lightning. I think we did that last time. We didn't do photo raws. We'll do that next Thursday. We'll start talking raw and what that is and the benefits of doing that. But yeah, just kind of download this and then just start working on it. Like what can I make better? And again, I just want you to start to train your eye as to how do you look at photos.
All right, and you said that this is gonna be due by next Thursday or something?
Yeah, try to get it done by Thursday. Like I said, I'm not, at this point, I'm not collecting it, but I may ask you to share it, or I may change my mind and say, hey, email it to me. I don't know.
All right.
Depends on how I'm feeling.
All right.
Hopefully I'm feeling good and you won't have to worry about it. But I want you guys to work on it. And that's again, that's just how this works, is you getting in there and trying to do it. And do what you want. Like if you want to get rid of all the people, do it. Okay, just kind of, I want you to make the picture better. But also look at it maybe from a color standpoint, which we didn't do any kind of color adjustments. You probably want to do those early, but you can still do it here. We do a color, we'll just do brightness contrast. Do it, I'm adjusting everything. Just pumping the contrast up and darken a little bit. Because it's at the top, it's going to do everything. I have it set so it does all the layers below. Okay, so you can do a color later, but oftentimes I like to do color first. That way I don't need this layer, and if I need it for something else, another kind of color adjustment, I can do that later. But it's just kind of getting to the process. How do you work? What's going to be the best way of doing it? All right, other questions? Let's check, make sure we got everybody today. This is no. All right.